my name is Emer Caslin. Before we get into Wind Energy Ireland and de-risking, just very, very briefly, I kind of want to, because people have even asked during the lunch break there what actually iCRAG does and the institute at the centre itself. So just to give you a little bit of context of where wind energy sits with our research challenges. So for those of you that don't know, we are a geoscience research group, Science Foundation Ireland Geoscience Research Group. We work on three main challenges, the first being around Earth system change. So this is about climate and environmental change through time. So we look at climate, environment, connected waters, marine and environmental geoscience. We also have a challenge around resources, and that's one of the challenges that we're looking at today around renewable energy and specifically around de-risking Ireland's offshore wind potential. So we look at renewable energy in the forms of geothermal energy as well as wind energy. We look at storage in terms of hydrogen, carbon storage, and also we have a kind of a wealth of knowledge of the Irish offshore basins as well. The other side of the earth resources is around raw materials and the sustainable exploration of raw materials, both for the energy transition and for our building sector. The third challenge is around earth science and society. So this is where we talk about and we investigate around geohazards. We look at geoengineering and technical engineering, and we look at the social side of things. So up until now, most of the disciplines I would have been referring to were more so on the geoscience and the engineering side of things, but within iCRAG we also have a number of social scientists working on how do we engage with society, to translate the subsurface to society at large as well, and obviously these are challenges that we'll encounter on the offshore wind side too. So supporting each of these challenges, we have platform technologies for geophysics and expertise, world's leading expertise really in geophysics, geochemistry, geomodelling, geosensing and geodata. So that's where we sit in terms of renewable energy, but there's a huge amount of other things happening within iCRAG, and we will have other follow-up workshops on some of these other topics as well, so watch this space. So very briefly, this is the agenda for today. So we're going to start with an opening session. As Murray's already introduced, we have we've got people coming from GSI, from Marine Institute, and also from Wind Energy Ireland that are pushing that pendulum on offshore wind and making sure that we can accelerate our efforts on that side. So we're delighted to have those external speakers coming to speak to us this morning or this afternoon. So we'll have three presentations on that from Niall Goodwin, Aodhán Fitzgerald and Owen Mccraw. And then we'll then go into iCRAG specific research. So we'll start with geotechnical and geological mapping. So we've got presentations on constraint mapping, on fibre optic approach to offshore site investigation and geotechnical research for foundation design. Then we have a coffee break, very important. And after that, we're going to have a session on challenges in the marine environment, where we look at modelling of scour and prediction of that, and also look at the environmental considerations and the social considerations of this sector and the research that we're doing in that space. We'll have another break, toilet break, and then we will have a future geoscience research in offshore wind, more so discussion. So we have Dave Linehan from Wind Energy Ireland as well, talking about research and the importance of collaboration between industry and research. And we also have representation from Gavin Doherty Geosolutions. And we have our in-house experts, Francesca Martini and Aoife Brady, talking about how to get involved with iCRAG. Finally, but last but not least, is we do have a social reception planned. It's been a while since anyone has attended a social reception at an event such as this, so we would encourage everyone, if you can, to stay on and meet the researchers and get some good discussions going. Okay, so without further ado, I will pass on to the first presenter. So this is Niall.
Good afternoon, everybody. Niall Goodwin here from Wind Energy Ireland, and just to start off, thanks very much to Emer and Murray and Mark and everybody at iCRAG for the invitation to be here. It's really great to see everybody here, and you know, as Murray I think said at the start, to be back in an environment like this where we can network and speak to each other in person and not behind a Microsoft Teams or a Zoom screen is a real novelty, and it's great to see the turnout today. And I think this collaboration, you know, and like potential collaboration between iCRAG and the wind energy industry, particularly now in the years ahead as we look to sort of fulfill on some of this massive offshore potential that we have, which I'll get into now in a second, I think is something that we really should press ahead with and work to strengthen. And I think there's benefits on all sides to that. I'm going to do a little bit of scene setting, I think, today, and I'll leave the detail to some of the people with far more expertise than me that come after me. But today I'm just going to speak a little bit about, you know, where we're at as an offshore industry and where we're heading, and I suppose, you know, what the overall context to all of this is. So the background to all of this, Ireland's offshore ambition. So in 2020, in June, the Programme for Government, Our Shared Future, was published, the document that kind of set out what this coalition government is going to do, and that was really, really positive for offshore wind. It increased an existing capacity target for offshore from what was 3.5 gigawatts up to a target of 5 gigawatts of offshore by 2030, but also a kind of a longer term stretch target of 30 gigawatts of offshore floating wind power in our deeper waters in the Atlantic off our west and south coasts. You know, no firm date on that, but showing that kind of longer term ambition, which kind of really feeds into that potential that we have as a country in this space. And that Programme for Government did also identify Ireland as a major contributor to a pan-European renewable energy system. And I think Murray mentioned it already. The events of the last months have really kind of put a spotlight on the importance of accelerating renewable deployment. You know, the Repower EU communication, which we saw the European Commission come with about 2 weeks ago, sets out that we need to get away from Russian gas and our reliance on fossil gas from Russia. Wind energy is a massive part of that solution, and we have huge potential, not just in Ireland, but across Europe, to deploy huge amounts of renewables between now and 2030 and as soon as possible. And Ireland is a massive part of that, with a sea area 7 times the size of our land area, you know, and one of, if not the best wind resources in the world. You know, we're really perfectly poised to contribute to that decarbonisation of Europe. The Programme for Government was followed by the Climate Action Plan, which was published, the follow-up, the 2021 Climate Action Plan, published in November of this year. And that really kind of set out that sort of ambition as well, that massive reduction in carbon emissions, an 80% RES-E target, which is really crucial. That's world leading if we were to achieve that by 2030. And you can see that target for zero emission gas as well, including green hydrogen, which is going to be a massive part of our energy system moving forward and decarbonising some of those harder to abate sectors. I mentioned that target to get down to that level of between 2 and 4 million tonnes of CO2 emissions in the electricity system by 2030. That means that we need to cut, in Ireland in general, about 30 million tonnes per year by 2030 across our whole economy. That's in line with our overall kind of emission reduction targets. In order to do that, we need to deliver that 5 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. And we do have the pipeline in place to deliver on that. We have about 20 gigawatts of offshore wind in active development in Ireland at various stages of the development process. Where are these projects situated? So the majority of these at the moment are on the East Coast. You have about 10 gigawatts in active development off our East Coast across 13 projects, and that includes 5 of the 6 Phase 1 projects, which we expect to enter into an auction later this year, the start of next year. We also have about 6,000 megawatts or 6 gigawatts off the South Coast across 8 projects, and about 6,000 megawatts or across 6 projects on the West Coast. Now, this information is from about a year and a half ago. We've seen a huge amount of activity in the sector since then. So I would expect that when we, in the coming weeks, develop our new study in terms of what pipeline is there at the moment, we'd expect this figure to increase significantly, such as the level of interest in the Irish sector. What do we need to do to deliver it? So in September, Wind Energy Ireland held our annual offshore conference. And at that conference, we launched the document that you can see on screen there, 12 months to deliver offshore wind energy. We're now 6 months into that 12 months that we identified then. And we have seen movement on some of the key actions that we identified that needed to be delivered in the next 12 months in order to ensure we get to that 5 gigawatt target. You can see some of them on screen. I won't go into them all, but all of these on screen we would consider to be really crucial if Ireland is going to successfully deploy that 5 gigawatt target. To give an idea of the timeline for delivery that's involved here. So I mentioned the phase 1 projects. So the phase 1 projects will be the first projects that deliver and will be the ones that enter into the first offshore auction probably later this year. We're currently looking at probably an end of year opening of that auction. We need to get as many of these through the system as possible and to receive their maritime area consents as soon as possible this year so they can enter into that auction and start the delivery process. Get them into the planning process as well, crucial, because most will be aware that for our first offshore res auction, projects will go in before they have full planning consent. So we need to make sure that the auction happens and we get them into the planning system as quickly as possible. This will set out the pathway for the rest of the 5 gigawatts to be delivered. And that's the phase 2 projects, which we're currently working with the department to identify. They will be vital, they will be needed to bridge the gap between what the phase 1 projects deliver and what is needed, the remainder needed to get to the 5 gigawatts. The phase 1 projects should deliver around 2028, and then the last 2 years of the decade will be delivery for the phase 2 projects. And we really need, I can't stress enough, we need a lot of things to fall into place, and we need to make sure we get things right, even in the next 6 months, to make sure that we can achieve on this and deliver these projects. I'm just going to take you through very quickly. You can see on screen, and in the interest of time, I won't go through them in full detail, but you can see some of the things that need to be done. The planning system. So really welcome the announcement last week from Minister Eoin to open up the application for maritime area consents. So we do expect the first projects to get their max in Q3 of this year. That's really positive. That sets the whole thing going. Grid connections and capacity is crucial. We need to make sure that the grid is available there to connect up these projects and that the work is done to show projects what they need to do to connect onto the grid. That's a piece of work that's ongoing, and there's a lot of work to be done, and that's something that really needs to be prioritised in the coming months. Also, the electricity grid needs significant reinforcements around the coast. EirGrid released their Shaping Our Electricity Future strategy late last year. That was based on a 70% target. We're now up to an 80% target, and a lot of work is needed to ensure that in the areas where these projects are going to deliver, the needed reinforcements are put in place. As I mentioned, the ORES auction, that's going to be crucial for giving that market signal to the supply chain, to the industry, that Ireland is ready to do business and is ready to deliver on these projects. And then we also will have the second ORES auction taking place in 2024, 2025, really important for bridging the gap. A key point that I do want to mention, and I think this is really important as well, the supply chain. We need investment in Irish ports in order to provide options for the projects to develop. There is currently no port outside of Belfast on the island of Ireland that is able to allow for the construction of an offshore wind farm. We need to direct investment into a port as soon as possible to make sure that we have port capacity on this island ready to deliver these projects this decade in the coming years. And we will need the European supply chain to deliver. I'll get onto that a little bit in a second with a bit more detail. Just to maybe give an idea of the scale of the opportunity, not news to anyone in this room, but we, as I said, have one of the best offshore resources in the world, a vast maritime territory. And you can see there those targets that we have, a 30 gigawatt offshore target of floating wind in our Atlantic waters. You know, research will suggest that we have up to 50 gigawatts off the south coast and 75 gigawatts off the west coast. You could say that 30 gigawatt target is even conservative. There is far more potential off our coasts than that, and it will enable us, as I said at the start, to deliver that clean electricity beyond our own system into Europe, be that through the delivery of electricity directly through interconnection or through the production of green hydrogen, which we have a huge potential for. And deploying floating wind in particular will help us to deliver on that potential. A quick word on floating itself. Last year we released a report called Revolution, and I'd really invite everybody to have a look at this. I spoke a little bit about the phase 1 projects, the phase 2 projects, and they're really crucial this decade to make sure that we can get this industry moving and give that market certainty. the floating wind projects are the future. They will be the ones that enable us to capture that potential longer term. And we really need to see work done to get them moving this decade so that we can capitalise on the opportunity later on. So one of the things that we as WEI are calling for is a specific allocation within the second ORES auction specifically for floating to make sure that we can get this technology off the ground. And I'd certainly invite everyone to have a read of this report. It really sets out the potential that we have in this area. My final slide, my second last slide is on that supply chain piece. I think this is important as well, that we really need to kind of keep an eye on the supply chain. There's huge competition in the international supply chain at the moment, simply because of the opportunity presented by offshore wind. Almost all maritime, if not all maritime countries across Europe have really ambitious targets for offshore wind. That means that there is going to be competition for a limited supply chain to deliver. Ireland needs to look at developing its own supply chain so that we can capture some of this investment ourselves, bring jobs to coastal areas and drive economic development in these areas. Without policy actions, we'll only be in a position to capture about 22% of our total offshore project value. That can grow to a level of 36% mid-decade with the right policy actions, and even by the end of the decade up to about half. But we need to deliver strategic investment into our ports. We need to develop offshore wind enterprise zones. We need to develop wind clusters, and we need to address the skills shortage, which everyone in this room is well aware of. I'll leave you with a very positive note. Naturally, I've been saying everything that needs to change, but there's a lot to be positive about as well. We are ready to do this. We can achieve it, and 5 gigawatts is really, really possible with strong policy delivery in 2022. There are a number of things we need to get right. Things are moving in the right direction, and if we can get the right amount of resources into key state bodies and we can accelerate the work that's needed, we absolutely have a chance of delivering on that 5 gigawatts. And look, thanks again for the opportunity to speak, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the contributions that come after mine.
Thank you, Emer. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a short talk on what the Marine Institute is doing to support offshore renewable energy research and innovation. So just a quick word about the Marine Institute. Our vision is to be as a global leader in ocean knowledge, empowering Ireland and its people to safeguard and harness our ocean wealth through a variety of areas, including marine research and infrastructures, oceanography, mapping and climate, marine environment and others. So we've been supporting the ocean energy research area for a long time, since there was initial work in 1996, and then from 2006 onwards, largely in the area of wave and tidal. And we've moved on to have a service level agreement with SEAI from about 2008, which is still in place. We've been operating observing infrastructure since the early 2000s, including the marine data buoy network, tide gauge network and a wave buoy network. We also provide environmental and data services and our test sites, which we support both our own and others. So the Galway Bay Renewable Energy Test Site was established in 2006. So numerous wave energy devices and other associated devices have been tested there. You can see the wave bob there and the OE buoy, I think. It was upgraded to be a cabled observatory in 2015. We've got ISO accredited HSEQ management on site, and we're awaiting, like many others, a foreshore lease for floating wind work on the site. So just our ocean observing infrastructure, so you can see it there all around the coast, consisting of the marine data buoy network from far offshore to nearer shore, tide gauge network, over 30 tide gauges around the coast. We have the cabled observatory. We also have a glider program, also a program of ADCP deployments and seabed landers. So these all provide industry standard data there. That's just the data from the site off Mayo, the SEAI site, the Amet site. Just in terms of our data and IT, we've a few different initiatives there, including the Digital Ocean, Ireland's Marine Atlas, that gives ready online access to observations, spatial data, model outputs. And also we have the marineplan.ie, which is data supporting the National Marine Planning Initiative. It's used to support maritime area decisions, and it links objectives and policies and supporting maps that relate to a given decision. So in other areas, just in terms of supporting research, we have quite a few funding supports for the sector, including the research equipment and infrastructure call. We have an industry-led research call. There are project-based awards that industry can participate in as a partner. We allow free access to the national research vessels. So we allocate funded days annually on both the RV Celtic Explorer and in the future the RV Tom Crean. We allow access to the test sites for ocean energy device developers and technology. We have networking grants and access to data and historical data sets. So I know a lot of the researchers from iCRAG have availed of the National Research Vessels Ship Time Programme. So it provides access to both our vessels and our ROV. I think in 2021 we supported a total of 228 days via 30 awards, and the Ship Time call opens annually between June and September. Other supports are support for attendance at conferences and workshop, marine training courses, open access publications, and even down to media production. So there's a link to all those on the Marine Institute website. Our Marine Institute research vessels, it's a 2-vessel fleet, soon to be 3 and then back to 2. So we have the Celtic Explorer, which we've been operating since 2003, the Voyager since 1997, and the new 52.8 metre Tom Crean, which is due in service this summer. So these are operated year-round, providing over 600 science days per annum. And as I said, they're available to researchers under the Ship Time funding programme. So you can just see an annual snapshot of where we go and what we do there on a typical year. So the Celtic Explorer, which is the larger one, it's very well equipped with deep water and shallow high-resolution multi-beams and sub-bottom profilers. Also supports the GSI 6-metre vibrocorer, gravity cores, etc. Also been used for CPT operations. You can see here there was a CPT program undertaken earlier on this year, very successfully, with a deep push CPT. There's some work we did out in the mid-Atlantic there with OBS seismic work. The Celtic Voyager, which will soon be retired from our use, has been a familiar sight around the coast for many years and has done a lot of acquisition in support of renewable energy research and investigation. And it's also equally well equipped. And then in summer 2022, we have our new ship arriving. Thought I did a little video there, maybe not. Oh, there we go. So this is its current state at the moment. It's been built in Vigo in Spain, called the Tom Crean after the famous Kerry adventurer. So it's a very modern, ultra-silent vessel, very green, low energy requirements, and very capable. And it's taken a lot of the lessons we've learned from operating the other ships over the last 20 years. So we're very excited to see that arriving in July and get straight into action when it arrives. So it's got an even more advanced hydrographic suite than either of the other two. It's got actually 2 EM 2040 multi-beams that can operate on different frequencies at all times. It's got sub-bottom profilers. It's very well set up for CPT, vibrocoring and things like that for ground truthing and other geotechnical investigations. Set up to take both our own ROV and UL's ROV Ethane, which is an SFI-funded infrastructure. And it's a silent vessel, probably one that's got a 7-bladed propeller, which should make it a bit like the hunt for Red October, we hope. And you can see a snapshot of the operations centre there, so it's going to be we're very excited about its arrival. And last but not least, we have our advanced mapping services team who work with GSI in delivering the Infomar programme, which I'm sure you're all aware is a DECC-funded joint seabed mapping programme. So we do about 90 days a year on our vessels, about 6,000 kilometres square of multi-beam data surveyed annually. And yeah, so I think I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, it's great to be here today. Thanks Emer and the rest of the team for the invite. My name is Owen Mccraw. I work for the Geological Survey of Ireland. I'm based in the Marine and Coastal Unit. But today I'm really wearing my Infomar hat, so I'll be showing you portals and data that have been created by both GSI and the Marine Institute. So what I'll be talking about today is we've released a new data download service for Infomar. It's been a long time coming. All it took was a global energy crisis to make us actually get up and do it, because it's going to be very important for supporting offshore renewable energy research and industry. And I'm also going to show you a new viewer we have for viewing our sub-bottom shallow seismic data online, which is something that we've needed for years really, and we just cracked that recently. So many people here are probably already familiar with the Infomar programme, but just by way of a recap, it's Ireland's National Seabed Mapping Programme. It's a partnership between the Marine Institute and Geological Survey Ireland. It's a joint delivery by both organisations. It's funded by the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications, and it kicked off in 2006 and it's due to finish in 2026. So it's a 20-year programme, and we're mapping all of Ireland's marine territory to quite a high hydrographic standard. So what I mean by that is we reach a level of accuracy that these data can then be used on nautical charts for safety of navigation, along with a range of other purposes like aquaculture, offshore renewable energy, which is obviously the topic today, any sort of construction that's been taking place at sea, and very importantly, habitat mapping. So these data can be used both to support a construction project or also to prevent it. So it's to help you make responsible decisions about where you're going to put objects on the seabed. So we're due to finish in 2026, which is unnervingly close. If you see this image on the right here, that's more or less a snapshot of how far we've got. Last year's data aren't quite on it yet, but we still have big gaps in the Atlantic shelf and down in the Celtic Sea, the Donegal coast and up around Galway, Mayo and Sligo. So we are on track to get it finished, but it's a daunting task, but we hope to get there. This is just a snapshot of the kind of distribution of effort that's needed to map the seabed. And if we keep buying boats, I'm going to run out of space on this slide. So thankfully, the Voyager is actually being replaced by the Tom Crean, so that's going to free up a bit of space. So basically, the Geological Survey Ireland takes care of the mapping from the 0-metre contour and also the intertidal, where we can, out to 30 nautical miles. And from there out into the deep sea and the outer shelf, the Marine Institute takes over with the larger vessels. So it's a really good partnership. Through the combined effort of both organisations, we're going to map all of Ireland's exclusive economic zone to quite a high resolution for the scale that we're doing it at. And then one of the challenges that remains is for the really shallow stuff right up against the coast, we've started using drones, an all-terrain vehicle with a laser scanner, and where we can, satellite bathymetry. Because once you get extremely shallow, the vessels can't operate there. People doing digital DTMs on land can't get in there. We call that the white ribbon. That's the little ribbon around the map of Ireland where there's no data. So how exactly does Infomar de-risk the offshore renewable energy industry, just to bring it in line with the topic today? Well, it's free regional scale baseline data. A lot of people are already aware of it. A lot of people are already using it, including iCRAG and several companies in industry. But we just keep having to get the message out there to make sure people are aware of it. It's while obviously for a lot of offshore renewable energy sites, you're still going to get survey companies going out and collecting new survey data, often at a much higher resolution even from what's on offer from Infomar. You can still eliminate a huge percentage of offshore sites at the desktop study stage just using Infomar data, and it's freely available. We also provide value-added products in terms of sediment classification, and I'll show you that in a minute. And all these products and these maps automatically de-risk this work, because anybody going out there to do any kind of research or industry work already knows what to expect on the seabed. The data are also available to survey companies as a QC tool. If they're capturing new data, they can compare and contrast with existing Infomar data in the area, which will give them a lot of confidence as well about what they're capturing. And also, by virtue of the fact that areas that have been mapped by Infomar are now a few years old, you're automatically getting a time series. So you can do, if you're capturing new data on top of it, you can do analysis on what kind of mobility you're seeing on the seabed, which is a direct impact on where you're going to site your wind farm. As well as that, we've been at this for nearly 20 years, so there's an experienced team in-house always available to consult on hydrographic and geophysical survey methods to both academia and industry. And since the explosion of interest in offshore renewable energy in Ireland, we've seen a huge spike in data requests for Infomar data, and it's really what spurred us on to improve our data download service, improve our viewers, and make them more efficient. And we're seeing data requests for everything from really close inshore data for port development right out to the offshore areas where you're going to get potential wind farms sited. This is just a snapshot to show you. This is off the south coast. This is our latest sediment classification. So we had classified the sediment here before at a coarser resolution. This is the higher resolution classification. This is available on the website, and you can interrogate the legend to see what the different colours are. So we're always refining as well and trying to improve the resolutions at which we're delivering these products. And on the website, you can also interrogate all of the seabed samples that were used in addition to backscatter to create that sediment classification map. If you click on each of these green circles, it'll zoom in and you'll have another cluster of sediment points. And once you dig into them, you can see sediment descriptions, photographs, particle size analysis, and again, all available for free to assist anybody who's working in the marine environment. So, jumping into the new Infomar data download portal, you go to the Infomar website, you go to your top menu, click on data, you get your link, and you jump into it here. It's much more visual and user-friendly than our old data download portal. You can see every survey leg here as a polygon on the right on the map of Ireland, or you can scroll down through the different surveys by vessel on the left. Anything that's green has data available for download. Anything that's orange is still in the works. We're either still processing it or it's going through a few final checks and balances. To give you an example, let's say we're interested in a particular survey polygon off the coast of Cork. We'll select this one that's already been hidden by its own pop-up, but this was going to be a video originally, by the way, but I just thought that's not a good idea for a live presentation. So I've kind of made a stop motion video with lots of slides. You click on your survey polygon, immediately a pop-up appears, and as you scroll down through it, you get links for the survey report, you get links for different formats of data. You can download XYZ point data, shaded relief geotiffs, Esri grids that will be workable in GIS, and you can also download all of the sub-bottom data in SegWi format, which is the preferred format for people working in industry, because you can work up that data with a number of different packages, software packages that are available. When you click into the report, you get your traditional summary images. So you'll see what kind of backscatter data is available, bathymetric data, ship track lines. And as I said, you can download the sub-bottom data. But the thing about sub-bottom data is, right now, we hope to change this in the future, but right now when you click on a survey leg, you have to download all of the sub-bottom data at once. You can't just download it for an individual line. We hope to improve that in the future, but to provide a link for each survey line is quite resource heavy, but we're working towards that. But what you can do now is you can look into the sub-bottom data online and see how it looks before you decide if you're going to use it. So to do that, this is our new Infomar sub-bottom profile viewer. Back to the main Infomar page, you go to Maps, Interactive Maps, and then Data and Sub-Bottom Profiler Viewer. And you click in, and this is what it looks like. It's every survey leg that we've done, color-coded. The dark green polygons is seabed data where you've got shallow seismic data, available in your SegWi form and your preview images. Light green is your seismic data is available, but we haven't put up the preview images yet. So this is very much a work in progress. It's quite recent. Orange is the shallow seismic data available in the future when we have it finished processing. And grey are survey legs where there's no shallow seismic data because the vessel at the time wasn't equipped with it. So again, just as a reminder, shallow seismic data is really important when you're siting offshore wind farms. So let's say we're interested in a survey off the coast of Wexford. This dark green one here, we click on it, we activate our track lines by selecting the layer, and let's say we're interested in a particular survey line, we click on this one here because it's nice and short and I'll actually be able to fit the image on the screen. It opens up the pop-up just like the other viewer with all the different links to survey reports, metadata and what have you, and you can click on a link there for the image and it brings up your profile image. And what you have then is your entire shallow seismic profile in one snapshot, stacked with the equivalent, the associated bathymetry from the same survey line and the associated backscatter, so you can correlate between the three. You've got your location map there in the bottom left showing the overall bathymetry of that particular survey leg and where the line was captured, and various metadata up in the top left there explaining the frequencies, the gain settings, all that stuff that was used to capture the seismic data. It's a JPEG, but it's high resolution, so you zoom in, you can still see a lot of data. And that's just a preview. Once you like what you see, you can go back to your link and download all the seismic data. About to shoot myself in the foot here and create myself a lot of work, but if you don't want to download all of the seismic data from a leg, you can get in touch with us and request specific lines. Same goes for the data download portal I mentioned. As a standard, we provide 2, 5, and 10 meter resolution with our seabed data, but oftentimes you can get much better than that, depending on the depth. I was able to grid up some data last year to 10 centimeters in Dublin Bay. So just get in touch with us if the resolutions aren't what you need. You can always work outside what's available on the download portal. Operational plan for 2022, just to wrap up. Your yellow line there is the 30 nautical mile limit. GSI will be working mostly west of the Aran Islands, up around Connemara. A big area of interest there around the Scared Rocks for offshore renewable energy, and trying to push up towards Mayo. And the Marine Institute will be down in the Celtic Sea and out on the Atlantic shelf. And I'll just finish with this. This is just an image of some nice data we captured last year on the RV Kiri around the Scared Rocks. It was actually released into the wild yesterday. A number of companies have already accessed it. Get in touch with us if you're interested in getting it. What it shows here, which is quite nice from a geological point of view, is the Galway granite meeting the limestone of the Burn out on the seabed, and you've got a very interesting geological fault context there between the two. So, thanks very much.